this is a commuter school, and I think, you know, the stats show that in the, you know, the university, that most people commute here. There are a lot of people who have jobs, who have other commitments, and for me as a student, I like to go to office hours, I like to ask questions, and you might not have that opportunity in lecture or office hours because they're once a week at one time, and you might have another class then too.
Straight from high school, it was my first time taking a university class. It was quite intimidating being in a class of 500 and not really confident enough to go up and talk to the professor. I really wish I had some type of extra resources online. We didn't have any lecture videotape. We didn't have any course outlines posted online, no discussion groups, and I felt really alone in the class. And I think having experienced the web-enhanced lectures in my other courses, I know that if I had had them in my first year, I would have been even more successful in that class.
Good morning. Those concerns of students for accessibility, flexibility, and engagement are what drive this session on e-learning. My name's Avi Cohn. I teach economics here at York, and I'm one of the participants in one of the Academic Innovation Fund projects. What we want to do in this session is give you a taste of the variety of projects that are going on around e-learning. We can't go into great detail, but if we do our job well, what we will hope is that you will want to know more. There will be a question and answer at the end of this session, and then all of us are going to be around for the day. And come and pigeonhole us, pick our brains, ask us the questions that you're thinking and that you don't get to ask during this presentation. All of the projects are situated along what Sue Vail is very fond of calling the e-learning continuum, which you see up here. And let me take you through what I think are the 4 most important stops on that continuum. Those are face-to-face, web-enhanced, blended, and fully online. So let's start with face-to-face. This is the traditional classroom setting. Those of you who have been in the classroom for many years, you have been speaking face-to-face without realizing it. It's what we're all used to. Moving along the continuum, what Web Enhanced does is to maintain the traditional face-to-face structure. All of the course planning is as though it is a face-to-face course, but we add some resources on the web. And this can range anywhere from a course outline to recorded lectures and everything in between. As we move further along the continuum to blended learning, this is where the transformations start to become more radical. In blended learning, it's still a combination of online and face-to-face, but a couple of things are crucially different. One, you reduce the amount of face-to-face time, which is obviously good for commuter students. And 2, what you are forced to do is to rethink your learning objectives. So you have to decide as an instructor, all right, if there are things I want the students to know, I want them to be able to do, I want them to feel, which of those learning objectives are best achieved in the classroom, and which of those learning objectives are best achieved online. So there's a whole new world of possibilities about where you situate your activities and then how you integrate those across the 2 different media. And then finally, there's the fully online course. Obviously, everything happens on the web. Now, fully online courses can be done very easily and very badly, where basically you just take your lecture notes from a traditional face-to-face course and paste them up on the web as PDFs. Or if they're done well, they also involve a fundamental rethink of how are you going to achieve your learning objectives, given that you're in an entirely different medium, the students will have different needs, and there's a lot to be done from an instructor point of view if you do fully online well. So we're going to be giving you some examples of each of these kinds of transformations. Now, if all we were doing is producing some web-enhanced, some blended, some online courses, we wouldn't be doing anything new or innovative at all. Many instructors at many universities have been doing this for years, almost going on decades. What we're trying to do that's different is to produce a scalable, sustainable system for producing e-learning courses, whether they're web-enhanced, blended, or fully online. And a system for producing those courses requires 4 key components. One, there has to be pedagogical support for the instructors, because most instructors don't know what the challenges are in moving to this variety of media. So there's pedagogical support. Second, there's technical and design support, because instructors are content experts. They're not technicians, and they shouldn't be expected to be technicians. Third, learner support, because the students in this environment face different challenges, and they're going to need help. And fourth and finally, assessment. We need to be able to benchmark what it is that we're doing, and we need to be able to figure out how to feed back the information that we gather and to improve what we're doing. Today, we're just going to be telling you a lot of stories, a lot of anecdotes about what people are doing. The plural of anecdotes is not data. In order to get real data, you have to use legitimate research methodologies, and we're engaging the services of Ron Austin's Institute for Research on Learning Technologies in all of these projects in order to assess what we're doing and improve what we're doing over time. So that's a sketch of where we're going. So we're going to start at the web-enhanced end of the continuum, and so I'd like to bring on Merv Moser. Merv Moser has been teaching at York for 30 years or more. He's been an innovator from the get-go, and he teaches typically courses involving the intimate number of 500 to 700 students, and he's going to tell you about how he uses Web Enhanced.
Thank you, Avi. Good morning. I've titled this presentation From Chalk to Bits and Bytes, and what I intend to do is explain how technology has enabled me to provide educational experiences for large groups of students that are richer, more engaging, and more accessible when we have 700 students than when I first started teaching and I had a course of 70 students. Now that may seem like a fairly bold claim to make, but I'm going to focus on 3 areas to try and emphasize this. The areas are quality, accessibility, and engagement. If we could travel back real quickly to the early 1980s, some of you may have been students at that time, and we take the standard lecture. It involved a professor, a lectern, blackboard, and chalk. The resources available to the student at the time were the textbook and the professor. In other words, lectures hadn't changed very much in the last 2,000 years. Let's examine accessibility and engagement at the time. My office was located in Founders College because kinesiology didn't have its own academic building at the time. Students seldom came for office hours. Those that did indicated that the trek over was rather onerous and asked why I was isolated way over on the other side of campus. After exams, I would post the grades on my office door. Students complained bitterly about having to hike that far and beseeched me to post the grades in a more central location on campus. When I posted the solutions to quizzes or exams, they invariably disappeared off my office door because the students who'd walked that far felt it was their right to take it rather than copy down. So other students were deprived of the answers. All of these problems disappeared when I moved into web-enhanced technology. So let's fast forward to the present. Kinesiology still doesn't have an academic building. Our offices are spread all over campus still. And my class sizes have gone from 70 to, as Avi had mentioned, 500 to 750 students. But with technology, and what we at York here refer to as a web-enhanced model of course delivery, I'm able to provide more engaging, richer, and better quality experiences for the students. Let's take some examples of this. First off, I believe that one of the great moments in teaching is when your students have the aha moment, when they go, I get it. And I believe one of my roles is to provide as many aha moments as I possibly can for my students. When I was first teaching, those aha moments either came from me or the textbook. Now, we have access to a global community of resources. I can go on YouTube and find animations of almost every bodily function and process that is very well done and explains it far better than I could. I can visit TED Talks or the Khan Academy and find wonderful explanations of all sorts of concepts. If I want, I can go to merlot.org and find learning objects that have been posted by instructors around the world to be freely used in my courses. So quality has gone way up because of the internet and the resources available. Talking about student engagement. I use Moodle a great deal. For those of you who aren't aware, as soon as a student enrolls in a course, they are automatically subscribed to a Moodle course or the Moodle website that is affiliated with that course. Before the course starts, I send students a welcoming email and some explanations. So already I've started to make contact with a student prior to the course starting. One of the things that happens when you're involved in very large courses is what I refer to as administrivia. One example of this, and it comes out in my welcome message to the students. Students enroll in courses in June, and they don't start taking those courses till September or January. And their lives have changed. They've either taken new courses, they've got part-time jobs that are conflicting, and it used to be that students would come to me with their problem. Students like to make their problems your problems. And I try and avoid that as much as possible. And one of the ways is with what I refer to as lab swaps. So in my welcoming message, I indicate to them that I have a thread posted here for those of you that have a problem with your lab time. Post the time that you want and the time that you have, and you work out a swap. I don't have to get involved. That frees me up to do what I love to do, which is teach. All right? I don't have to waste time on administrivia. Now, I believe that when you have a group of 700 people, I actually have like 700 undergraduate assistants to do stuff for me, and I want to utilize them. And so here's an example of that. One of the things I do is I give back my exams to students. And if you know a student who took the course last year, you have access to last year's exam, which is wonderful for that student. But if you don't know anybody who's in an upper year course, you don't have access to it. And so that student's at a disadvantage. So I eliminate that and I level the playing field by posting all of my last year's exams online. But I don't give them the answers, despite their begging and pleading. What I do is this. I say, there's quiz 1. You answer it. There's 700 of you. I'm sure the wisdom of the crowd is going to come through and you will come up with the answers. And so here's the beginning of this thread. A student has said, here's my answers. What do you think? And lots of stuff gets posted. Other students saying, no, I think you've done question 9 wrong. You need to fix this. This student has gone on the internet and found a YouTube video that says, here's why you're right or why you're wrong, and posted it for other students to look through. Not only do the debate questions, some students say, I don't understand, how did you get that answer? And somebody will post the arithmetic calculations involved in coming up with the answer. And right away there's a post that comes back, says, oh, thank you very much. Oh, I couldn't have done it without you. That's great. I don't have to do any of this. The students do it all. Right? So there's an example of the engagement that occurs. Now, there's a couple of other things that are possible using these kinds of forms. For example, in lecture, when a student asks a question, my lectures are generally fairly well organized. I have course kits. They can follow along, copy things down. But occasionally something will come up in class. Student asked, I don't understand how this answer from the textbook is arrived at. Well, that wasn't part of my lecture plan. But using the technology in the classroom, I can solve it, writing messily by hand. And I can then post it on Moodle. So the students that weren't able to copy this down quite as quickly as I was writing it, or weren't at class, now have access to it. And so changing on the fly is very possible using technology without losing the students. I was going in this direction, but now I'm going in this direction. Another example of this, just recently in my statistics course, introductory course, I was dealing with a statistical procedure, and the Toronto Star happened to be running an article on how the police may or may not be using racial profiling when they pull drivers over. And so I was able to link that to what I was doing in class, spur of the moment, put the post online or the link online, and students were able to interact with it and follow up on it. Now, one of the other features that I use in my classroom setting is lecture capture. All of my lectures are recorded, and that can be a little bit intimidating, but it is what it is. And so here's an example of it. The box on the left clearly is yours truly doing whatever he does, and the larger box on the right are the PowerPoint slides as they've appeared in class. Now, you have the ability to reconfigure this. If you don't want to see the Chrome Dome marching around on stage, you can make just the slide appear, and you can just watch it that way. You can also skip to whatever slide you want to use. Now, I strongly urge at the beginning of the course, use this as a supplementary tool, not a supplement. A supplementary tool, not a substitute. In other words, come to class and use this as a review tool. The good students do that. They're sitting in the front rows. The poor students are the ones who don't attend, and they try and watch 12 hours of lectures in the 6 hours prior to the exam. It doesn't work. And so we can discuss that further but during the Q&A if you want, but this is not a substitute for face-to-face lecturing. The final thing I wanted to show you this morning is, remember I said I've got 800 or 700 undergraduate assistants in my course? They find wonderful things. They scroll around, they're doing the internet, doing all sorts, and they send stuff to me. And it's really helpful and useful. And so I want to give you an example of that. So a student sent me this. And what I'm going to do here is a little bit of magic. I'm going to read your minds. What I would like you to do is pick a card. Right? Don't point to it, don't write it down. I just want you to think really, really hard about that card. All right? Focus on that card. I can read your mind, and I am going to tell you what card you picked. Right? Your card is gone. Thank you.
Thank you, Merv. Well, Merv has made it very easy, has made me look good when I said it. I hope this will leave you wanting more, and Merv will be back for the Q&A. So our next presenter is Mark Robertson. He's university librarian in charge of information services. He's chair of the Learning Commons at York, and he, along with Sarah Koish, who's the university e-learning librarian, have been pioneering this project called the Virtual Learning Commons. It situates along the continuum in the sense that everybody, whether they're on face-to-face or fully online, as a student, needs support, needs research support, and Mark's going to talk about how this project provides it.
Thanks very much, Avi. So as Avi has mentioned, this is a kind of learning support for students, especially when they're in an online environment. So it does have broad applicability across the spectrum of e-learning. It is a joint collaboration between the York University Libraries, the Writing Department, and the Learning Skills Services. And what it is, and what we're building, is an online toolkit of resources for students to help them specifically with the challenges they have around completing written academic assignments in particular. And it focuses on 3 areas: research, writing, and learning skills. So these are the core areas of it. So I could tell you a little bit more in my words about what has inspired us. It's been a long journey and it's been a really exciting one, but I think it'd be more meaningful to hear from a student, to hear in their words why they think that this is helpful. So we're going to have a clip from a student named Keele Peng, and she's a second-year economics and Spanish student. And we have about 20 students that are involved with the Virtual Learning Commons who we consult on an ongoing basis to ensure that the Virtual Learning Commons meets their needs. So we're doing focus testing and getting input and feedback at every step along the way. And so she's one of these students who's been very helpful. And so Keele is going to talk just for a couple seconds about the kinds of challenges that she faces when she's doing written academic assignments.
Like the hardest stuff when I start for a research paper, I think it's gonna be choosing a topic, because it's gonna be math, because I don't know where to start. I think the start point is the most hardest one for me when I start for a research paper. The other problem for me for writing a research paper is that I don't know the reference list, because like in the university, actually one question is that the plagiarism. Is that I don't know how to avoid that before I attend for university life. Actually, I learned from the professor, they all said this is a really big problem.
So she talked very eloquently about some of the challenges, and she highlighted 2 things. One is that she sometimes has trouble knowing where to begin, and I think this is one we can all relate to, whether or not we've been students recently or not. Partly it's a challenge of knowing how to frame a question and what constitutes a good scope for a paper or for any kind of assignment. The other thing, and part of it also is knowing, even once you have a topic, what's the process that you go through? Where do you start and where do you proceed? The other thing that she did talk about was the struggles that she has with doing references, okay? So, and by references, what she meant was actually citing sources when she's doing papers. And this is a really big issue. Students aren't entirely clear on what that's all about. I'm sure I can see some nodding heads, so I think you can relate to that. And that's a really big issue around academic integrity. And sometimes students just aren't entirely clear on what's required. So that was another thing she talked about. So those are a couple things that Keele talked about, but we know from other students, the work we've done, that there are a whole host of challenges they face. So it could be around time management, for instance. It could be about reading strategies and note-taking. It could be about how to write a draft and do an outline and organize your thoughts, or about finding appropriate research materials for an assignment. So there are many services across the campus that support students in these kinds of areas. So I mentioned the 3 that are collaborating here, the libraries, writing department, and learning skills. So a couple of years ago, we got together and started talking about sort of some of our commonalities around this kind of academic support for students. And we realized that we had a lot in common, and that in fact, from a student's perspective, these things, research, writing, learning skills, and other things, are all one thing. It's an integrated whole for them. It's not these separate domains. And yet, we realized, wait a minute, the location of our services are in different areas of the campus. So there's the libraries, writing department, learning skills in different corners. And so students would have to go to different places for that support. So what we did is developed the Learning Commons. And the Learning Commons was launched, it was opened, it was a renovation in the Scott Library, and it was opened in 2010. So you can see some of the pictures of the Learning Commons facility, the renovation in the Scott Library here. And you can see here it's learning and writing. You can see that we've got some areas where people can get help, and they're in one spot. So that was one thing we want to do, is integrate those things. So now with a virtual Learning Commons, we want to take this one step further, and we want to take this integrated and holistic approach and bring it into an online environment for any students, but especially for students who are perhaps working or in e-learning courses. And so what we're creating is what's called the Virtual Learning Commons. It will have 12 modules, and I think you'll see some images of the, here we go, all around the room. And so this is a work in progress, and it will have 12 modules that will talk about those different aspects of doing assignments. And it is intended, of course, primarily for students, but we also want this to be to work also for faculty. So it is modular such that faculty can take the pieces and embed them in their courses, in their online environments. You may notice, I don't know if you can see it, right here it says Spark. It actually doesn't say Virtual Learning Commons on the website. That's become our project name, but in fact, all along the way, we've been testing everything with students, as I mentioned, and been getting really valuable feedback. And one of the things the students said is that they preferred the name SPARK, which stands for Student Papers and Academic Research Kit. It was much clearer to them than the term Virtual Learning Commons. So we're learning all along the way. We're co-evolving with our group of students who are helping us develop this project. So now I just want to return to Keile, and this clip is really about how she believes the Virtual Learning Commons will help address her challenges.
Actually, the Visual Learning Commons is really helpful for me because it's really organized. This is the big point. For the first time when I look at the website, it actually tell you everything very clearly and organized. So you just click on it for the first start on your research paper, and it comes up to the whole point, like where to start, and tells you how to narrow down the topics. And also when you click on the second step, it will tell you step by step very clearly. So actually really like this program, like this Visual Learning Commons. Actually it will help the student without any knowledge of how to write an essay and write a research paper. It actually helps a lot.
So we're very excited to be heading into our second year of work on this project. It's not available quite yet, but it will be soon. And incidentally, at the end of this interview, Keile talked about how enthusiastic she was to be engaged in this project next year when she returns in September. So we look forward to working with the Virtual Learning Commons team and the students we've got working with us.
Thank you, Mark.
Thanks very much, Evan.
It's very obvious how the Virtual Learning Commons, A, supports any student anywhere along the continuum, but B, supports students. As Patrick said in his opening remarks, it's students, students, students who are the priority, but listening to what that's all about, I can hear so many instructors saying, yes, 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 thank you, because it will make life easier and allow instructors, as Merv said, to focus on content as opposed to some of the other details. So we're going to go back to the continuum itself as opposed to the support underneath it. And we have arrived at Blended. And in order to introduce Blended, I'm going to let my co-leads on this project that's joint between the faculties of health and LANPS introduce the topic.
Hi, my name is Susan Murtha. I'm a professor in the Department of Psychology, Faculty of Health, and I've been given this amazing opportunity to work with my colleague Gary Sprackman on an Academic Initiative Fund project exploring e-learning. In particular, this year we're exploring the creation of a blended learning prototype. So e-learning is defined as the electronic delivery of instruction Blended learning is a component of that. Blended learning lies along the continuum of e-learning. So blended learning tries to take the best of what you do in the classroom and combines it with the best of what you would do online.
I'm Gary Sprackman. I'm a professor of Management Accounting and Information Technology in the School of Administrative Studies, with our two faculties representing about 70% of the students on campus. It's quite an important endeavor. I guess in the long term we would hope what we learn from our project can be used for the entire university.
I think we've reached a point where students want more. They want to have access to more information, and they want access to it more often. We have an increased number of students arriving at university who actually don't live anywhere near campus. And we have students who want to be more engaged with their professors and the programs that they're involved in. Blended learning gives everybody the opportunity to solve some of these problems. So we can make automatic the things that should be automatic, whether or not it's repeated testing so that someone learns content, factual content, and puts in the classroom the stuff that should be in the classroom, like discussions and reflection on material and things like that. It gives the professor the opportunity to work with students who are then becoming much more engaged in the material. They know the material a lot better, and they get more excited about the material that they're talking about.
From those courses, we hope to have prototypes, and we're going to study the effectiveness of various techniques, various models, and therefore learn from that and improve our teaching of blended learning courses over the next few years. It's a first step in what we believe to be a major change in teaching and learning at York.
So Susan is here, and she will join us for the Q&A. Gary Sprackman is on sabbatical in New Zealand, and he received the invitation to come, and he thought about it, but he passed. Fortunately, we do have two other live innovators in blended learning who are going to come up and share their experiences now. These are both professors from the Faculty of Health. So there's Nancy San Giuliano and Sherbin Dinka. Welcome.
Hi, Avi. Welcome, Avi.
Nancy is in the School of Nursing and has degrees both in nursing and in education, and is doing online research in online environments and social networks. And Sherbin has been the coordinator of the health informatics program for quite a number of years here at York. So I thought I would just give them a chance to share a little bit of their experience with you. And I have a couple of questions. Let me start with Nancy.
Great.
So Nancy, can you explain to everybody how the blended format contributed to the teaching and learning experience?
Sure, thanks, Avi. I'm so excited to be here. I think this is an exciting project, and my colleagues, led by Susan, was just amazing. So I'm really happy to be able to share some of my experience. I think the main thing with blended learning was it gave me an opportunity to create a wonderful interactive learning community. And with blended learning, you have the best of both worlds. You have the online world where students are provided with the flexibility of decreased travel time, of course, and perhaps decreased parking expenses. But beyond that, the online world created an intimacy that you really can't establish in a large lecture hall. It allowed students to communicate in a way that is very familiar to them, be it discussion forums, tweeting, Facebook, and so on, and blogging. So it was really a familiar way for them to communicate. And where they would perhaps be stifled in a large lecture hall, they were able to really express themselves and critically analyze issues related to our topics that were just fulsome. It was just amazing to read, and you were really able to connect with the student and realize that they were being engaged in that sense. Now, the other side of blended learning is you get to meet in class. And those classes became very casual, very like, oh, we're meeting again, you know, we're able to connect and maybe discuss what we've been doing online and validate each other's teaching, learning. So that became a really nice, relaxed environment. And we would talk about the postings that students had and just being able to use internet resources and use the course content, the course objectives as the lens to the internet resources that were available to us. So it's been pretty exciting, and I look forward to using the format again in the future. Thanks, Avi.
Thank you. Sherbin, I know you've had some really positive experiences too, and why don't you share those?
Okay, thanks, Avi. I will start by saying that the Academic Innovation Fund this year gave me the opportunity to redesign one of my courses, which was on electronic health records. And this course is teaching students about adoption of technology in the healthcare field. And I thought that by adopting, I can give my students a positive example by adopting technology in the learning process. So I've recorded and delivered half of the lectures online, and I was able to free up more time for meaningful interaction with the students in the classroom. We had more case studies, real-life examples, videos, and hands-on exercises with the electronic health record software. So the students were more engaged, and they were able to apply more of the concepts and the theories from the lectures. Second, the blended learning course facilitated the communication and collaboration of students. Students were happy with the fact that they were able to interact with their group members early in the course, and this helped them with the collaboration online later. Also, the discussion forums were helping students and make them be more confident and helping them to interact better in class the next week. Third, having all the student contribution to the course captured on the Moodle website was actually an incentive for the students to submit better work and to be more engaged both in class and online. And a positive experience for myself was that I've generated digital content that it's reusable, the lectures that I have now, and the time that I spent to redesign the course and to produce the lectures will pay off next year when I'll teach the course again. It was a positive experience, and the students seem to love the blended model. And I will be happy to adopt the blended model to other courses in the future. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I've heard both Nancy and Sherbin give much more extensive presentations of what they're doing, and I strongly encourage you to talk to them because it's really quite fascinating, both from the student perspective as well as from the instructor perspective. A couple of comments about blended. York prides itself on being an interdisciplinary university. And in my mind, blended is the interdisciplinary equivalent of e-learning. It provides the best of both worlds. Not surprisingly, the data, not the anecdotes, but the data show, first, students prefer a blended format to any other format. They prefer it to fully face-to-face. They prefer it to fully online. Second, again supported by data, is that the learning outcomes are actually better in a blended course than they are either in an online course or a face-to-face course. Now, given those facts, you may be asking, you should be asking, well, why isn't everybody doing blended? And the answer is, it's not easy to do well. It requires a big adjustment on the part of instructors in particular. It involves a complete rethink of how you are teaching and incorporating new media with which you might not be familiar as an instructor. It involves design skills. It involves support for students. And that's why we believe what's really important about the project that we're doing is not that we're producing some of these courses, but that we're producing a system, a sustainable, scalable system. I'm an economist. Patrick's looking for good value for his money in these kinds of projects, and rightfully so. And there has to be a way to do this that is cost effective and that effectively reduces the cost to the instructors, mostly the cost in terms of time, in terms of getting up to speed and doing this, as well as being incentives for instructors to take the time and to take the energy. There have to be institutional rewards to move us into this blended world where I think everybody benefits. All right, we still have one stop left on the e-learning continuum, and that is fully online. One of the beauties of fully online is that it removes all geographical barriers in space. It's easy to access from wherever you are. And who better to talk about this than a professor of geography, Robin Roth. Robin?
Hi. Good morning.
So Robin has an absolutely fascinating project that I'm going to let her tell you about.
Yeah, so I guess we'll start with an introductory video, and this was it was a good opportunity for me to use some of the other skills here at the university to produce a short clip introducing you to the way that we can use online learning in an innovative manner to reach groups of people who otherwise wouldn't have access to it. The idea for this project began when Duncan McLaren of Australia Catholic University approached Dr. Winona Giles and asked her if we'd be interested in joining a diploma program that they've had up and running, offering a liberal studies diploma to hand-picked students, refugee students on the Tiber-Beas border. The project is designed to have benefits for both York students as well as refugee students. On the York side, they're gaining an opportunity to interact with refugee students who've been born and raised in refugee camps in a virtual platform using Moodle. Through the course that I'm teaching, Geography 2030, the End of the Earth as We Know It, an Introduction to Global Environmental Change. So they are taking the course at York, and the refugee students are taking it online, and so they have an opportunity to interact on particular assignments as well as just through discussion boards. The hope is that York students will learn more about how the refugee students on the border understand global environmental change and experience it. I'm assisted in the course by Ipu Han, who's a PhD student working with me here at York University.
As the tutorial leader for this project, I interact and assist 2 refugee camps along the Tiber and the border. For this course, Skype has been a very useful tool because they are able to ask me questions in real time, and I'm able to interact with them on a more one-to-one basis.
Many of these students were born and raised in refugee camps and haven't had access to formal post-secondary education. And so through this project, they're able to obtain transcripts from reputable universities. In the past, they've been able to use those transcripts to gain access to post-secondary institutions when they settle in third countries. So for them, this is a massive opportunity to get ahead and to be able to serve their community as well as their own personal lives and families.
I'm passionate about this project because I believe this creates an incredible opportunity for the students. And additionally, since I am also from Burma, I know that I'm assisting people who have had similar situations in the past, and I believe that it's really important.
It's really challenging but worthwhile project. Absolutely could not have been possible really without the support of the AIF. And I think as an added benefit, it's really brought international attention to York University as a place that has a social justice platform and that is offering education to refugee students and people who desperately need it, at the same time as offering the benefit of increased intercultural learning to our own students. So I'm very grateful, and I'm glad that the AIF has provided the kind of unique opportunities necessary for these projects that maybe couldn't otherwise be funded to get a head start and to get off the ground. So when I started this project, I really just wanted to offer a class to refugee students, right? I thought this was a valuable and worthwhile thing to do, to give access to higher education to a group of students who otherwise wouldn't be able to have it. And I also saw how using kind of technology and online learning platforms, we would be able to reach other groups of students who through geography or through political circumstance aren't able to sort of walk into a classroom here at York and listen to me talk about all sorts of things that I think are really important. What I didn't necessarily anticipate when I first started planning the project was that the the online kind of learning platform can be used to increase interaction between these groups of students. And you heard in the video and some of the examples Merv used earlier that we can use some of these online tools to actually have these two groups of people who otherwise wouldn't have the opportunity to learn from each other, to share each other's experiences, to debate kind of the material of the class, to do so on an online environment. And this is actually important when we're dealing with global environmental change, right? These are sets of problems that we all contribute to and we're all affected by, differently, of course, and to different extents. But clearly any sort of set of solutions around global environmental problems require the ability to collaborate, to discuss across difference, to kind of a firm understanding of other areas of the world. So in that sense, this sort of online learning platform worked really well for this class, and having an international student body worked really well for this class. The other thing I didn't expect to have happen was sort of for me to morph into, from a professor who a year ago believed firmly in getting people to come to class and to listen to me talk about stuff that I cared about, into someone who, a professor who believes that maybe, actually, some of these interactive online learning platforms might be the best way to get people to care about these issues, to act on these issues, and to discuss these issues. And so now I'm involved in transforming the York section of the class into a blended format where 50% of their activity will be online and 50% of their activity is in small tutorial sessions and extended tutorial sessions. And I'm hoping, I'm actually really excited about this. I'm hoping that it gives people not only the flexibility to do some of this work kind of in their own time and in the geographic location of their choosing, but I actually think it's going to increase the quality and the ability of them to interact both in tutorials as well as online. And so, who knows, maybe in a year or two I'll actually offer the entire course online. We'll see.
A couple things I love about Robin's presentation. One is her excitement and her transformation. And two is the use of technology to promote York's core values of accessibility and social justice. So that gives you some sense of the scope of projects along the continuum. We're going to bring everybody up now for a Q&A. I'd like to point out in closing that even though this is a session on e-learning, I hope you've gotten the idea that the technology is not the point. The technology is just a tool, and it's a tool that allows us to address the needs of York students, most of whom are commuter students who work part-time, and it's addressing their needs of accessibility and of flexibility and of engagement and of learning. And we look forward to sharing more of our results with you in the future. So this is where we open it up for question and answer for the audience. I'm expecting it'll take you guys a few minutes to gather up your courage oh, no, it's not taking a few minutes at all.
A question to Merv and Servant. Recognizing that this is a continuum and that distinctions are artificial, what is the difference between what you, Merv, are doing under the point in the continuum of web enhanced and what you are doing as blended? Do you see that each other are doing something different, or are you just using different labels for the same thing?
I would say that we are doing something different. I am continuing to lecture face-to-face for the appropriate or the normal amount. And the way I formulate the course is entirely different than I believe it would be done if I were doing it in a blended format.
Yes, the blended learning format, it's actually bringing the both worlds, the online component to the classroom and the classroom to the online world. So I'm teaching the course in the lab, in the computer lab, so the students have access to the online tools while working collaboratively. So this is the main difference between our courses.
Can I just add one more point to that? The definition of blended requires that part of the face-to-face time is replaced by the online time. So you don't attend the class 3 hours a week every week for 12 weeks. you attend the class maybe 50% of the time, and the other 50% of the time you're online working.
That is Susan Murta, if you didn't recognize her from the video. Susan, I wanted to ask you a question as well, having been involved with this for a long time. Was there anything unexpected that happened from this whole experience?
Thanks for the question, Abby. If I were to look back and think about the things, or at least one thing that came as unexpected, was that because our steering committee was comprised of representation from 2 different faculties and the University Information Technology folks, the e-services folks from LAMPS, Learning Technology Services from, I mean, we're talking a huge number of people involved. When all these respective academics and everybody else went off to their respective conferences, they started talking about what we were doing here at York. And all of a sudden, we started getting emails back, or people started coming back with saying, oh, Guelph is talking about what we're doing here, or McGill is talking about what you're doing here. So the lens has changed. It's now on York, and the perception of what we're doing is changing. So I think that's really important to understand and to know that we have this amazing opportunity to do this right, and this is what we're attempting to do.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you for the interesting presentation. I'm just wondering about the shift from web enhanced to blended learning and the issue of resources regarding, do you need more TA time to deliver, to make that change?
In the shift, I mean, when there are resources that happen in a number of different areas. The first set of resources are those devoted to building the course in terms of what it takes to restructure the course. And what we've done, thanks to the funding both from the AIF as well as our respective deans and our 2 faculties, is to provide the training and the technical support, as well as access to funds for instructors who are attempting this transformation. The transformation from web enhanced to blended in terms of TA time and probably professor contact time depends a lot on what you do. Certainly, anytime you get more student interaction and more personal involvement, there's the chance for more work. I mean, this happens in a face-to-face course. If you assign an extra paper, you are going to have to do more work because you're looking personally at what the students have done. In the online environment, there are ways to deal with those kinds of numbers. For example, many people have talked about discussion boards, and Merv uses his in exactly this way for his students answering each other's questions. One of the things I do in a large course, 500 students, and I have 8 TAs, is the TAs are assigned a segment of the course. You basically divide up the students alphabetically. And then when students post a question, the first word of the subject line has to be the name of their TA, and then that TA is responsible for answering that question. One of the beauties of that system, compared to a face-to-face situation or face-to-face office hours, is that in an office hour, when a question gets answered, one person benefits. When a question gets answered on a website, the entire class benefits. So one of the things faculty members learn in the training that we do are all the ways that you can leverage the tools that are available in order to try and contain what the workload issues would be.
Thank you. Well, we saw one minor drawback with technology in the classroom, and that was that some of it doesn't work sometimes. Mm-hmm. But those are purely practical and I think can be put aside. But I would like to hear from the group if you think there are any drawbacks to technology and the new environment, or is it really the golden fleece?
I'll start with that. It's not golden fleece, of course. There's always issues. When you're using a computer, you know something's going to go wrong. But we have a great team. We have the teaching learning team. Our IT people, they were very responsive, and anytime we needed something, they were there to help us, especially with our group. So certainly there's learning pains when you're starting an online course, but no more than if the photocopier doesn't work and you can't print off your material. So I think you can always work through those things. And as far as a blended learning environment or any online learning environment with TAs and so on, because you have more of a standardized setting for your website, the people that are helping you mark or grade or helping you teach the course actually have an easier time, in my opinion, because everything's laid out for them. All the documents they need, all the rules are there, and the teachers and the students are seeing the same information. It's like a no surprise environment.
Robin, do you want to go after?
In response to that, the lecture capture that I alluded to or demonstrated, there is a drawback to that. Not the technology. Technology works wonderfully, thanks to the folks at the IT department. But those students who aren't disciplined enough to come to class and watch the lecture are in trouble. And I would suggest that probably the grade point average in a large class might actually drop down somewhat using lecture capture. That's because the A students can only go to an A+. The C student can go to a D+, a D, an E, or an F. So there's more room to fall than there is to raise. So I would say that you need to be careful with lecture capture.
I mean, I would just add to that, I don't know if I'm double mic'd now, but so I use lecture capture, and in some instances with the blended format, which I'm moving to now, of course, they don't have the option of coming to class and listen to me lecture all the time, and half of them are in person, half of them are not. So there is a discipline issue. Like, I think it's also the discipline to actually sit down and watch the lecture on time and not wait till the last minute and so on. I think that's one of the drawbacks. The other is that not everyone learns that well that way, right? And I think this is why what Avi suggested is that blended is actually the most preferred. I think it's kind of the highest grade across the board because it gives a little bit of everyone. You still get to talk to the professor in person every week if you need to, or if you want to. You can spontaneously ask a question to someone as they're watching and so on. So I think some people don't learn all that well online, and so they're probably not going to be the kinds of people who take too many online courses. So I think it should be part of a suite, not the only way to go about it.
Yep.
Just one more point. A lot of this relies on a really good communication strategy between the professor and the students. And so the examples you've heard today, I mean, Merv begins every lecture talking to his students about the drawbacks and the benefits of the lecture capture. So he informs them up front. And then he follows up with them. I mean, Sherbin had to email some of his student groups, right? Sherbin, did you want to speak to that? I mean, sure, I'll let him talk to that.
I can speak about it. So the beauty of the blended learning model is that you can intervene early in the course when you're seeing that the students are not participating because all the student, as I said, all the student work is continuously recorded, and you can keep track of the progress of each student. So students who are not participating could be approached and they, and intervene early in the course rather than at the end.
I want to throw in one other disadvantage from the instructor's point of view. All of these web-enhanced, but more especially the blended and online formats, are essentially a transformation from a teacher-centered model to a learner-centered model. And that's one of the reasons why the learning outcomes get better, is because the learners get personally engaged in what's going on. But from an instructor point of view, if you've been used to being the king or queen of the hill in the classroom, where you don't depend on other people, you set the agenda, and the students march to your drum, this involves relinquishing a whole lot of control. And I know certainly when I did it the first time, I hated that aspect of it. I'm very comfortable knowing where things are and what's going to happen next. And when you relinquish that control, you've got to step back a little bit and trust that the students are going to step in, or nudge them on the side to start getting them to do what you want them to do in the way that other people have suggested. But this is part of what the resistance is in moving to these models, is that you are moving from a teacher-centered to a learner-centered model. At the back.
Yes, for the blended learning and the online learning, I wanted to ask if the professors have virtual office hours with web cameras? Set virtual office hours?
No, I haven't done that yet, but it's in the plan for next year.
I'm doing it now, but my first one's next week, so I don't know how it's going to go. I myself haven't done the kind of chat room thing, so we'll find out. I imagine more of them will attend than my actual office hours.
All right, we have time for one more question.
You're pioneers, and I really want to thank you for your leadership. I view your success stories as a positive virus, so I'm not interested in infection control. I want to see how we can infect my whole faculty and how we can infect all of York. So what's your insight on how we can engage more of our colleagues? What is our readiness? How do we take these really compelling examples and spread it and get it to scale and do it quickly?
Okay, so, hi Harvey. Thanks for the question. I think actually it starts, we have to start small because we want to do it right. And then you want to reward what's done well. So we had a recognition event between LNPS and Health, and at that event we joined up with the Experiential Education Engagement AIF project group people. And so between our two groups and two faculties, we had about 45 people come out. These are new people who are interested in adapting their courses to either blended or online or adding the EE component to it. And so that's where it begins. It's word of mouth, it's from the grassroots level. And you know, as each of us go out into the world and we start talking, especially these guys, when they go out and talk to their colleagues about their experiences and how it's working and what works best, it's about informing everybody about best practices, right? There's not one way of doing any of this, but there's certainly things that work better than other things, and that's what we're beginning to figure out, and we're passing on to the best of our ability.
We are around all day. Please come and talk to us. Thank you for your time and attention, and we're looking forward to the other sessions as well.